Texans making coaching changes or lack thereof after hiring an OC. The wide receiver speculation continues. Let's take a close look at that position. Stefon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, rookies, all of it. Is it really that tough of a task ahead for D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio? Plus a lot more to get into. Another live edition of The Locker Room on YouTube.
Yeah. It's The Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really.
It is The Locker Room, number one source for Texans digital content. I am Landry Locker. You can see me here throughout the week, SNL as well, at 4 o'clock with myself and Cody Stoots. Texans making moves when it comes to the coaching staff, or maybe not so much. We'll get into that. But first, let's start with this wide receiver position. The Texans have a lot of opportunities to improve at the wide receiver position. And let's just be honest, there's only one way to go, and that's up, based on what they ended the season with. You started the season talking about this team having one of the best three-headed monsters in the NFL, Stefon Diggs, probably the best receiver in camp, just based on training camp performance. Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Even when those three guys were together, they never really were all gelling at the same time. And we really didn't see much of that either. Now Stefon Diggs is a year older. He's going to be coming off a torn ACL injury. Do you even bring him back? We'll get into that in a second. Tank Dell, not going to play football next year. And Nico Collins, as good as he is, he tends to get hurt. He missed 5 more games last year. So wide receiver depth is incredibly important for the Houston Texans with the new offensive coordinator, the pivotal year for CJ Stroud, and just really the overall desire, need, however you want to put it, to fix the offense and figure some stuff out. Right now, the only wide receivers you have under contract are you have Nico Collins, and then you have 3 guys on wide receiver deals. One of them's not playing next year in Tank Dell. Xavier Hutchinson and John Metchie. That's where you're at the wide receiver position. So you got to figure something out. That's the bad news. It seems like there's a lot to do. There's also a lot of opportunity for the Texans in this area. You don't have much invested in it. There's potential trades that could make sense. The wide receiver market sometimes plays into the lap of teams in that same tier as the Texans. And you're also in a draft where there's always opportunities at 25 and in the second round to get wide receivers. And there could be the perfect guy that we'll get to in a sec. We'll also get to tomorrow a little bit more of a profile on him. Let's start out with Stefon Diggs. Yay or nay when it comes to Stefon Diggs? Would you want the Texans to bring Stefon Diggs back? For me, I vote no. I would say no. I thought they did a good job of shortening that contract. On second, like, for all the criticism about what the Texans did or didn't do, and it's valid criticism, we can list the things that they did wrong on offense. With the benefit of hindsight and with where we are right now, thank God they did what they did with that Stefon Diggs contract. What if you were committed to paying Stefon Diggs how much ever he was going to get paid? And I know there wasn't a ton of guaranteed money there, but you have no contract obligation to Stefon Diggs, who is coming off of a torn ACL. He's a year older. There's a possibility to get a little bit grumpy when the money situation's not going to be right, at least in his mind. And also next year, it's going to be a new offensive system. So Stefon Diggs would have to learn a new offensive system. Now, I think he's capable of it, but he's not the guy that's going to be grinding. He's not going to be at OTAs. He didn't, I saw Derek Stingley. He did an interview on the pivot with Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, and Crowder. Pretty good interview. His dad did a lot more of the talking than he did. Shout out to Pop Stingley. But, he talked about still being there despite not having the contract, and kind of that's what the Texans culture is. And last year he talked about looking over at Nico Collins when he was awaiting his deal and still seeing him work out and talking about that's what they're about. Stefon Diggs didn't work out and stay around the team after he got hurt. He was gone. We saw him 2 times. We saw him when Netflix was there, and we saw him at the one playoff game. We didn't see Stefon Diggs. He wasn't there. Now, that's not saying that his teammates don't like him. He was a great teammate last year. Nobody has anything bad to say about him. But it's not like Stefon Diggs is just 100% bought into what they're doing. He was dipping out as soon as he rehabbed. Jalen Petrie was rehabbing. And you could say it's contractual. He was still getting paid by the Texans. He just wasn't around. And there were some whispers that maybe that was a little bit weird to some. So the Stefon Diggs for me would be a nay. Torn ACL. For all the talk about Cooper Kupp's injuries, and we'll get a little bit into that. I think there is a little bit of nuance to it that I think kind of needs to be mentioned. But for me, it's a nay when it comes to Stefon Diggs. I think there's a lot of options, veteran wide receiver options, and the new system, the money. I think there's a little bit of a shelf life when it comes to Stefon Diggs. So that would be a no for me, dog. A no for me. Harris Beard says Diggs is better than Kupp and cheaper. Better based on what are you basing that on? Are you basing that what you saw last year? Are you basing that on the numbers the years before that? What are you basing that on? He did just tear his ACL, so we haven't seen him post ACL. We saw Cooper Kupp play some pretty good ball this year. He did miss some time, but we saw him play some pretty good ball when called upon. There were times where he did his thing. So what is Diggs based better on, and what contract do you think Stefon Diggs is accepting? That's another question. The Rams are going to take quite a hit. What do you mean better? Cooper Kupp knows the system. Cooper Kupp provides you with something that you don't already have. Cooper Kupp appears to be hungry. What are we basing Stefon Diggs being better on? I'm just asking. I wouldn't. Okay, so you're basing it on last year. Okay, appreciate the follow-up. So you're basing it on last year before he tore his ACL at 31 and had his first major injury. Cooper Kupp had a hell of a start to the season. He ended up getting hurt. If you're just talking production, they got Puka Nacua, and they're kind of a running team too with the Rams. So if you're just comparing the stats, yeah, he's not. He statistically last year, Kupp was not it. But you're kind of just ignoring one small thing. Like for all the talk about Cooper Kupp's injuries, Stefon Diggs just tore his ACL. First injury he's had to deal with. So I don't know that I can say with 100% certainty. I'm not telling you what to say. I don't think it's like crazy, but I don't think I can 100% emphatically say that Stefon Diggs is better. And I damn sure don't know that he's going to be cheaper. Stefon Diggs just kind of pissed away $40 million or whatever it was, 20 mil, whatever this was going to be. I don't know what kind of deal he's going to get. I think there's a chance Stefon Diggs gets humbled by the market. I think there's a chance that the first wave of free agency goes, there's question marks, and then the draft goes, and then Stefon Diggs has to settle for like a 1 or 2 year deal. Now, do you want Stefon Diggs on a 1 year deal? What if stuff goes wrong? That's up to you. He was good last year. But I don't know that he's going to be cheaper or not. I'm out on Stefon Diggs. I would move on from that. I would still be in the free agent market. I would still entertain the possibility of trading for Kupp. But I'm out on Stefon Diggs. Yay or nay, Cooper Kupp? This one's pretty polarizing. Now, there's the concerns are very valid. That contract, that's a no-go. The Rams know that too. They have Puka Nacua, who's a better player right now, who has 2 years remaining on his rookie deal. Kupp's on the back end of his career. Might still have some pretty good football left. And he's missed a few games. I do, though, want to look at kind of the nuance of some of the games that Kupp has missed. And I know that whenever we're looking at games missed, a lot of times we kind of total it. And I know in the last few years, Kupp's missed some games. But the 2022 season, I would like to talk to someone who covers the Rams, because Kupp only played 9 games. So clearly he missed 8. But there's also a chance that, much like Derek Stingley, when he was a rookie, that they just kind of shut him down. Because Matthew Stafford only played 9 games that year as well. They weren't in very good position. So if the Rams had been good, there might be a chance that he misses half as many games. So maybe there's a little bit of nuance to the Cooper Kupp thing. But the ankle injuries, et cetera, are good. He tore his ACL in 2018. That's way past. Quite frankly, torn ACLs, I talk about Diggs. Like, Stefon Diggs takes care of his body. He can recover from the torn ACL. But I think there might be some nuance. Like, I don't think you can just count total games, especially when the large chunk is from 2022, because the Rams sucked and they had nothing to play for. You shut someone down, you put them on IR, which is the case sometimes. So we'll see what the price is. Obviously, the value matters, and we'll see exactly what happens with Kupp and how that goes. Then there's the other opportunities for the Texans at draft. And I think the best way to attack free agency at wide receiver, depending on what you trade, is don't shop at the top. Don't shop at the top if you're the Houston Texans. Shopping at the top is for teams who don't have a number one wide receiver. That's for like the Tennessee Titans to overpay Calvin Ridley. That's for the Jags to overpay Zay Jones. You don't really need to shop at the top. That's where wide receivers get overpaid. What you want to do is kind of like what the Kansas City Chiefs did last year and what we've seen kind of Baltimore and some other squads do, where if you like some second or third tier guy, you sign him, then you draft whoever you want to draft. You get as many young guys. And if the market speaks to someone, then you might have an opportunity to get a guy on a 1-year deal. It's what the Chiefs did with Hollywood Brown. Obviously, he got hurt, but 1 year, $9 million for Hollywood Brown, you could do a lot worse. But you don't shop at the top when it comes to free agency. I mean, there's some guys that people are talking about. There's the Palmer, Elijah Moore. That's kind of the second tier. Those are guys that could get overpaid. I'm not opposed to the Elijah Moore experience if the Texans like him and if Nick Caley likes him or Palmer. Question is, how much does that cost? Wide receivers kind of become like, it's not quite where running back was. Although I think especially if we see the Eagles win the Super Bowl, I think there's going to be a resurgence of appreciation for the running back position, which you love to see. But the wide receiver position is becoming interesting because what's the position that we see guys traded the most when they're about to get like mega contracts? And after they sign mega contracts, a lot of times it kind of seems like it's a little bit of a disaster. It's wide receiver. We see it all the time. We saw it with Diggs when he got traded to the Bills. We saw it with Nuke Hopkins when he got traded, although the Texans didn't quite get the same type of value. We saw the Chiefs punt on Tyreek Hill, send him to Miami. Like you see wide receivers when they get that top end money, and you want to pay them. Like you want to pay Nico Collins. But a lot of times when they get that top end money, you can be in no man's land, especially if you don't have a quarterback. The other thing about it is when it comes to the wideouts is there's so many in the draft now. Every team throws the ball a lot. A lot of times you can find hidden gems. Like at 25, there's going to be a wide receiver available for the Texans. It's just going to be a matter of who. They're going to have to select the right guy. Wide receivers can fall to you, but more times than not, there's going to be over a handful of wide receivers selected in the first round. The one advantage that the Texans do have, and I think this is important, and we'll get more into this as the draft kind of rolls on and we get closer to the draft. The wide receivers that as we get closer to the draft, the wide receiver position is really like the only marquee position the Texans need. And in the first round of the draft, if you look at the premium positions that are the most expensive, that people try to get on rookie deals, the Texans got to feel pretty good about those positions. Offensive tackle, although I don't know if they want to find a long-term plan for Laramie Tunsil or if they want to lock him up. But you like Blake Fisher and you like Laramie Tunsil at least next year. Don't have to worry about the Tunsil thing just yet. And then corner, you feel amazing with Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter. And then quarterback, you feel good with CJ Stroud. So as you're watching the draft, if you're a Texans fan, and tackles, there's always a ton of tackles selected. You're almost happy when a tackle goes, when a corner goes, when a quarterback goes. You're happy because you're not really in that market in the first round. Exceptions, maybe, specifically at tackle. If you find someone that you just absolutely love, then maybe you can try to put together a cheaper offensive line for when CJ Stroud's on that rookie deal or off that rookie deal. But the Texans kind of have that advantage where the premium positions that a lot of teams are looking for in the first round, you don't necessarily need that. So you can shop in free agency, you can draft, and then you can shop when the market speaks to these guys in free agency. You're actually you look at the depth chart and you say, oh, crap, that's a crappy wide receiver depth chart. There's a lot of opportunity. And here's the other thing about the Texans that they've kind of emerged as. When the market speaks to a lot of these guys on the free agent market, could even be like a Stefon Diggs, could even be Hollywood Brown again. But when the market speaks to these guys and these guys come to the realization that they're not going to get long-term deals, they look for teams that have good quarterbacks. They look for teams that are contenders. They look for those types of teams to sign the short-term deals with. Like you're not going to be a Hollywood Brown or even a Stefon Diggs, Elijah Moore, although I think he's probably going to get a little bit more than that. But you're not going to sign a 1-year deal with the Browns. Doesn't make any sense. You're not going to go sign a 1-year deal with the Raiders. Doesn't make a lot of sense. They're going to have to overpay. The Texans are actually in a position to where you already have your top end guy, so you don't have to overpay in free agency. Because you have that top end guy, if you can pair him with someone that's on his rookie deal that's elite, you're going to feel good about yourself. And then when it comes to churning the wide receiver depth chart, you're in a good position because you're somewhat of a destination. So they're really, really, really in good shape for shopping for wide receiver and fixing the wide receiver room. They just got to make the right call. They got to make the right decision. Super chat AG913. On the topic of wide receiver, why do you think Cortez Hankton, LSU wide receiver coach, doesn't get NFL shot as wide receiver coach? He coached some dogs, coach up some mid-tier guys. I don't know. Same thing with Hartline with Ohio State. Do you want to leave? How much do wide receiver position coaches make? I don't even know. Like, what's Hartline's salary at Ohio State? I know they get dog after dog after dog after dog, and it's kind of become wide receiver U. Some of these guys are position coaches. They're making 6 figures. They feel good, and they just don't want to leave. Maybe they're not offensive coordinator types. We always assume that these guys are just trying to make big moves and hop up. A lot of times offensive coordinators in college, they're looking at the NFL and stuff like that. But position coaches, I don't know, what does a position coach make at Ohio State? Like, what is Brian Hartline's salary? I mean, he's kind of looked at as the wide receiver whisperer. What is his salary as compared to Ben McDaniels with the Texans? I don't know. It's an interesting thing to look at. I can already see on the chat when it comes to wide receivers that this is going to be heated debates when it comes to these guys. I want to focus in on one guy that is getting a lot of run and seems to make a lot of sense. I'll get more in depth as to why he makes sense tomorrow. That's going to be my noon drop, maybe 11 a.m. drop. But he seems to be one of the most popular names being mentioned. And there's a portion of people that seem to think in round 1, it's a little bit too rich. I can see in the chat multiple people saying he's overrated. But Emeka Egbuka in round 1 for the Texans. I think they need a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. I think there's just a lot of opportunity there. Maybe they like someone else. But this seems to be one of the most popular names that is emerging. Now, if you look at his career, he was never the best wide receiver at Ohio State. Now, they've had some pretty effing good wide receivers at Ohio State. They've had first rounder after first rounder after first rounder after first rounder since he's been there. He's been solid. He's got the intangibles that everyone speaks about. He's a good blocker, not as explosive, but he's quick. Some say maybe there's some unrealized potential because he did play with those dogs. Others say the fact that he was never at the very tip top and looked at as the dog shows that maybe he's not a first round pick. Maybe he's more of a day 2, second, third round pick. This is going to be probably the biggest argument that Texans fans get into when it comes to the wide receiver. I haven't really dug in on these guys. I do think, like, as far as his character, they're going to love him. They're going to absolutely love him. Like, the Texans are a faith-filled team. I don't think I'm not saying he's Tim Tebow, but I don't know that he's too far off when it comes to Egbuka. So the personality they're going to love. CJ Stroud's going to love him. They're going to like the fact that he does the small things. Now, from a skill set standpoint, you can make a case, and I think after the combine, if we're stacking up measurables and we're stacking up 40 times and stuff, it's going to be really interesting to see how he stacks up. Because there's always going to be that guy or those guys that kind of surprise and kind of thrive when it comes to the combine. How is he going to stack up? Right now, I've seen Zerline. I think Lance Zerline, shout out to Lance. He has him mocked to the Texans. Jeremiah, I think, has him going a little bit later, if I'm not mistaken. Those are the 2 mocks that I typically look at. But round 1, Emeka Egbuka is the most popular guy right now. Some people are throwing out Golden with Texas as well. Like him all right. Don't know if he's a first rounder either. A lot of these guys, the production is not as high as you would maybe like, but I don't know. Like, as far as Egbuka, we'll see. I like him as a player. I really want to see what these guys run and stuff. Like, I don't like him enough to sit here and stick my chest out and say, okay, draft Egbuka. I like him. I would love to have him on my football team. There's a big difference between taking a wide receiver at 25 and taking a wide receiver at 50. It can work out either way. You can find your guys in the second round. We have plenty of examples of that. But you want to get the best guy possible regardless of what happens. Like, we don't need to point to exceptions. We don't need to say, well, that wide receiver was found in the second round. This guy was found in the third. No. I think we need to let this process play out before we start pounding the table for Egbuka. I think he's a good football player. Is he a first-round guy? We got to see what happens at the combine. We got to dive into this a little bit more. I don't know how many guys. I don't think this is as strong of a wide receiver draft as some of the recent drafts have been, but it'll be interesting to keep an eye on this. Don't sleep on running back either in round 2, round 3 to pair with Mixon. Nick Caley comes from 2 places that very much value running back, like churning running backs and bringing running backs in and all that. Patriots used to do it. Rams like to do it. So we'll see how this goes. There's a lot of intriguing wide receivers. How much time do we got for the draft? We got 2.5 months. We got 2.5 months for the draft. We got damn near 25% of the year to get into it. So we can argue wide receivers. The Egbuka, though, this one's going to be interesting. It's going to be real interesting to see how this whole thing goes. Big time. And what he runs. If he goes out there and runs a 4.4 or something like that, all of a sudden they're saying, okay, he's a surefire first-round pick. We don't know what he's going to run. He's one of those guys who can run a 4.6, and you would say, okay. He's quicker than he is fast. He's a guy who can run a 4.4, and you say, oh, okay. He's jumping up there. Don't want to put too much stock in it, but I do think that Egbuka is going to cause the most fights for the draft, for sure. I'll do my first mock draft probably in March. I'm not going to do a mock draft before the combine. We're going to the combine. We'll be at the combine. I'll do it then. I'm not going to do it there. Now we'll move on to Metchie and Hutchinson. So we've talked about the best way to attack free agency at wide receiver. Don't shop at the top. We've talked about the massive opportunities the Texans have as a destination later on in free agency. where they are in the draft, the fact that they already have their top dog, the Texans have a lot of opportunities to improve at wide receiver. I want to ask this. Metchie and Xavier Hutchinson. I'm not even asking, I'm saying. They should not impact offseason plans at all. You should almost function as if they're not even there. If you sign somebody, trade for somebody, and you draft somebody, hell, bring in rookie free agent wide receivers if there's guys that you like. These guys had a chance this year to show if they could step up with Tank Dell and Stefon Diggs out. Now we can blame it on the system. They're damn sure not blaming it on the coaches. We'll get to that in a second. But they didn't step up. Metchie dropped a lot of balls. There was a flash here or there. Hutchinson, up and down. He looks like a day 3 project type of guy. Now, I still think Hutchinson could end up being something. You got 2 years left on the rookie deal. Seems to have the right makeup. I'm not completely dismissing it. We're going into year 4 of John Metchie. This is the final year of his rookie deal. We've done this experiment a lot. I like John Metchie's makeup. I like the way that John Metchie, everything he's been through. But as far as being a football player, he shouldn't impact your plans at all. You should function as if you have Nico Collins and nobody else. If that means you push these guys back to where on paper before training camp, we're looking at it and we're saying, damn, these guys could be your 6 or 7 or 8. They could be on the outside looking in, so be it. But there should be no point this offseason where when you're looking at wide receiver talent, you should say, well, we have Metchie and Hutchinson, so that's going to prevent us from doing blank at all. Shouldn't happen. Does that mean that they can't come to camp next year and make the team? No, it doesn't mean that. But they shouldn't prevent you from doing something. If the Texans are drafting in the 5th round or the 7th round, and they've already added 3 wide receivers to their roster, if there's a wide receiver that they feel could be something on day 3, draft his ass. Because there's a decent chance that he's better than either one of these guys. It's just the reality of the situation. Rams did it last year. Rams had Kupp and Puka, and they drafted Jordan Whittington in the 4th round. That's where Nick Caley was. Rams will have starting running backs, and they'll draft running backs. Competition in camp never hurt anybody. Both of these guys should be battling for roster spots next year. Some would say they did this year. They both ended up making the team. We thought they were competing with each other. You should be actively looking. You should hope that these guys are better. Maybe the system's better. Maybe their surroundings are better. Maybe there's some natural development. But these guys should not impact your plans at all. Not even a little bit. Not a little bit at all. Metchie and Hutchinson. So there you go. That's the wide receiver layout. Now we're going to get to the coaching staff. It is the locker room number 1 source for Texans digital content. We'll go to some of the comments on the receivers before we get into the coaching. Mike M says, wasn't Tim Kelly as well as O'Brien both tight end coaches before they were OC? Makes me worry about Caley. I mean, so was Ben Johnson, so was Andy Reid, so was Kevin Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year, so was Sean McVay. I wouldn't be too worried about that. And let's be honest, Tim Kelly was only an OC because he knew Bill O'Brien. Those are 2 terrible examples. Like Tim Kelly was not hired because he was a tight end coach. He was hired because he followed Bill O'Brien around for years at Penn State all the way to the Texans. I think you can actually make a case that's a pretty good layout of guys that were tight end coaches before they called their first play. Marcus says, go get wide receiver and then fix that line and then go from there. I'm hoping the system fixes the line a little bit. I'm hoping the system can fix the line and put them in a better position. That's the hope. The wide receivers, you need dogs. You obviously need to make some changes on the offensive line, but I'm hoping this system makes it a little bit easier. I think that's very, very important. Vegas says Emeka is so overrated. Sean follows up, very overrated. See? He's going to start. Marcus defending his honor. Vega, you overrated. DF. Any takers on Amari Cooper? Amari Cooper is probably washed. He's kind of like Cooper Kupp and Stefon Diggs in that he's on the back end and he has the durability concerns, but he's also in that area where the market speaks to Amari Cooper and he has to settle for a 1 year, $8-9 million deal, whatever the hell the market tells him. You might be able to do a lot worse. I don't think you bring in an Amari Cooper or Stefon Diggs or even Cooper Kupp. I think your hope is that the wide receiver that you select in the first round, or maybe someone that you sign in free agency, is your number 2 guy. And then these guys just kind of add depth, high-end type of depth, experience depth. But if you told me that Amari Cooper, you're going to get him on a 1 year, $10-ish million deal, I haven't seen what the projection is, then maybe. I don't think that should be like some sort of first thing to do. Demarcus Robinson is a 5th, 6th receiver to replace Woods. Robinson's 30 years old, had some good moments with the Rams. You could do worse than that. I mean, he's better than Metchie and he's better than Hutchinson. You get him on a 1 year deal, something like that, 2 year deal, few $1 million, how many ever per season? You can do a lot worse. He's better than Metchie. He's better than Hutchinson. I'm not completely dismissing the Hutchinson thing, though. I think he could end up being a productive 5th, 6th receiver, perhaps. CJ, go get your boy from college. Space Age says, Landry, if we get a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, I jump for joy, especially as Savion was in the mix. Perhaps. Perhaps that could happen. Perhaps that can happen. Guys are arguing about Egbuka. Already going on like that. Y'all are being crazy. Love Dave. Don't know what you're talking about. Xavier Worthy on the market. Yeah, it's definitely not happening. He is untouchable for the Kansas City Chiefs. There's no doubt. Joshua says Diggs counts 16 million of dead cap if not re-signed. Yeah. Well, that could end up being a problem. I'm not a cap guy like that. So we'll see what happens with Diggs, how it goes. Does the other contract, does that bleed in? Don't know. You ask Texans cap. Texans cap, pretty good on that. Let's move from wide receiver to the offensive staff. So we know Nick Caley has been hired. Aaron Wilson's kind of been all over this. And it's kind of been like a under the radar type of reaction from the fan base. Seems like if these reports are true, and there's no reason not to believe it, we kind of hinted yesterday that Popovich was going to be back. I think a lot of people saw that, kind of read between the lines. But Cole Popovich, the assistant offensive line coach, he's going to be back. As a matter of fact, he's going to be back with a promotion per Aaron Wilson and a lot of other reports. He's going to be the run game coordinator and the O-line coach. So a guy who was an assistant O-line coach is going to be the main O-line coach, and he's going to be the run game coordinator. Some people are saying, how do you keep this guy around? He was an assistant O-line coach. I don't look at an assistant O-line coach like I do a quarterback coach. I think it's a little bit different. I don't think you quite have as much control as like a quarterback coach or a position coach. But he was in New England. Backstory is he ended up getting let go in New England because he refused to get the vaccine. You can look it up. He refused to get vaxxed. So they ended up, at the time, it was kind of a sensitive thing. They ended up letting him go. He kind of worked his way back, ended up with the Texans. The Texans hired Chris Strausser. And Cole Popovich, his contract expires in 10 days, I think. He has kind of a history with Nick Caley from their New England days. Nick Caley thinks enough of him to where he's going to keep him here, and Cole Popovich is going to be your O-line coach, and he's going to be the run game coordinator. So Cole Popovich returns despite being on the staff last year. He's going to be here. Interesting, but we'll see what that looks like. Then we have the QB coach. According to Aaron Wilson, it looks like Jerrod Johnson could be staying. Now, I thought making Jerrod Johnson the offensive coordinator would have been pretty risky, really interesting. Not completely dismissive of how that would have gone, but that probably would have been my last decision, my last pick. But Jerrod Johnson apparently staying as the QB coach. And why the hell would he not? Like, why the hell would Jerrod Johnson not stay? Like, from his perspective. I saw it kind of thrown out there. Well, you know, he could be frustrated. I kind of threw it out too. Where are you going to go better? I don't know how much of a chance he actually had with these OC gigs. Like, I don't think the Raiders were going to hire him. I kind of think if you're willing to pay Chip Kelly $6 million, I don't think Jerrod Johnson and Chip Kelly, like, you're kind of in that mix. I know CJ likes Jerrod Johnson. I've heard that the offensive linemen like Cole Popovich, which is kind of interesting too. Like, does it matter if the players like him? Like, what do you think of him? I think the Popovich thing is Nick Caley kind of has a background with him and he kind of respects what he does. He also worked under the best offensive line coach of all time in New England really closely. Wasn't like he was fired in New England. Again, it was a Vax thing. So the Popovich thing will be interesting. He has the background with Caley. Jerrod Johnson, it's hard not to talk to him and not like him, be honest with you. Like, I'll be honest with you and say I don't think, you know, despite that I would have picked him as OC. But if you're talking ball, life, anything with Jerrod Johnson, it's hard to imagine you don't like him. And Nick Caley, it's probably going to be his offensive philosophy, and I think Jerrod Johnson can probably work with anyone. So Jerrod Johnson, he's going to be here. How does that make you feel? Still a little bit of the same offensive staff. Then we have this one from Aaron Wilson. The Texans are expected to hire Rams senior offensive assistant Jerry Skoplinski. Don't quote me on that. A former Tom Brady quarterback coach with the Patriots, per Aaron Wilson. Let's get to know this guy the way that a lot of people get to know such folks. Through a little Wikipedia action. So he is 47 years old. Let's get the pick up here with my guy. I'm doing the same thing y'all do. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm an expert on the guy. I'm learning the same way y'all are. Be honest. We'll talk to him and get to know him. But hey, a lot of these coaches are WikiLeaks. So he went to John Carroll. Just like Nick Caley and Nick Caserio. So they all went to the same college. He was with the Patriots in 2013 and 2015. Offensive assistant QB coach. Then he went to the Dolphins. Kind of misleading the way Aaron said QB coach. He was the assistant QB coach. Then he went to the Dolphins. New York Giants QB coach, 2020 and 2021. Then Las Vegas, senior offensive assistant coach, tight ends coach, and then he was a senior offensive assistant. So a lot of senior offensive assistant in this thing. Notice this, though. Look at this. It's a diverse staff right there that they're hiring. We have a guy who refused to get vaxxed, and we got the guy right there proudly wearing his mask, hand on the heart. Look at that.
High-grade marijuana called Kush on the streets.
Look at, he is proud to be wearing that mask. That was when Nick Caley was kind of out. Let's see if we can find this Nick Caley story. I think it's an interesting nug. Yeah, not seeing the story. No, it's not Nick Caley. Popovich. See, I said Caley. It's not Caley. Popovich. All right, don't quote me on that. Providence Journal right here. Here we go. I said Caley. Caley, not you, sir. You were still on the staff, my friend. You were still on the staff, my friend. Cole Popovich. Cole Popovich. Yes, we will get to speak to Nick Caley at the Combine. Hopefully one-on-one. Figure that out. But yeah, here was the Popovich. Cole Popovich, this is from the Providence Journal. Cole Popovich, Patriots assistant coach, out due to the NFL COVID mandate. Patriots co-line coach won't be a Patriots this season due to NFL guidelines covering the vaccine. The NFL is requiring all Tier 1 employees to be vaccinated against the virus. That includes front office coaches, joining the Minnesota Vikings line coach and Rick Dennison. With Popovich leaving, Popovich joined as a So yeah. Dunzo. This was on July 23rd of 2021. So he worked his way back, got him a promotion. Shout out to you, Popovich. Shout out to you, my friend. See how that goes. But the question is, how do you feel about the Texans keeping a lot of the offensive staff? I don't know. I think it's not like the biggest deal. I think an assistant O-line coach, I don't know how much of an impact they can really make. But it's definitely interesting. I mean, they basically just think that through personnel decisions and basically Nick Caley and then getting rid of Bobby Slowick and Chris Strausser, that they can fix this offense. We'll see whether or not they're right. I don't think it's like the Texans have like adopted the Patriot way. I don't think they've done that, because Nick Caley is clearly a guy that a lot of front offices and a lot of organizations like, but it's three guys that were from New England. That used to be a sensitive subject around here. Now, they proactively fired Bobby Slowick. That was a sensitive subject once upon a time. Remember the Caserio days? I've covered every second of Nick Caserio's run. I remember some folks. God, he's just going to bring in his Patriot buddies. Oh my God, we got to watch Danny Amendola and Rex Burkhead. Oh, it's inevitable. He's going to hire Brian Dable because he worked in New England. Oh, Gerard Mayo. Oh no, what is Easterby still doing here? It's 3 former New England guys. 2 John Carroll High School guys. Or is it John Carroll College? Might as well be a high school, let's be honest. They only went there because they weren't good enough to go D1. Let's be honest. Let's talk. Come on, Caserio. You know that. You went to John Carroll. You can sit there and say Don Shula went there and all that. You went there. Frank, y'all went there because y'all weren't good enough to play D1. Y'all were too small. So we'll see what happens when it comes to this squad. But keeping the offensive staff and bringing in New England guys, it's interesting. It's a nice little mix. Hopefully, it's a little more McVay than it is some of the other Patriot stuff. But once upon a time, that was a sensitive subject. I'm old enough to remember, and I wouldn't even have to be in kindergarten to be able to remember that. Steve says, I would prefer Caley choose his own staff. I think he is choosing his own staff. I think if Nick Caley wanted to get rid of Gerard Johnson or Cole Popovich, he would be able to get rid of them. I don't think he's coming in here and they're saying, hey, you have to have these guys. He knows Popovich. He probably knows enough people who know Gerard. And again, you talk to Gerard, hard not to like. So I don't think this is a situation where he's coming in and not hiring his own staff. I wouldn't make that assumption. Wouldn't make that assumption. Also on the chat, Vega, Ollie Gordon got ran to the ground in college. I'm worried about his longevity, but he's a dog. Ollie Gordon from? I know where Ollie Gordon's from. Trinity High School. Trinity High School. Same high school that produced Miles Turner. They have like a really big Tongan population. Their O-linemen were like 370. Their O-line averaged like 315 pounds. Trinity High School. Back in my day. I like Ollie Gordon too. I don't know when he's going. There's some interesting backs. I heard Brian Broaddus say, who's one of my favorite draft guys, the draft show with him and Jeff Kavanaugh and David Hellman. Dane Brugler does a lot of work there. There's really 3 or 4 workhorse guys. We never know. But Ollie could be a guy that's there 3rd, 4th. I don't know. I think he's going to be good. I think he kind of found himself in a position at Oklahoma State this year where he was the only guy. I mean, they've kept that quarterback around Bowman for like 12 years. But they were just stacking the box against him. But there's an opportunity there at running back as well, like receiver. Other stuff to get to before we get out of here. Again, the Egbuka video dropping tomorrow. Derek Stingley. I don't know if y'all want to check this out. Derek Stingley and his pops did an interview on the Pivot. It was funny. Stingley doesn't talk a lot. I think they got him a little bit loosened up. He said the same thing that he said to me. When I asked him, do you want to get this contract done? He said he wanted to be here forever. He said it on the Pivot. Bigger platform, though. We're being honest. We always are. But he said that his dad actually talked more than him. I know his dad's a big part of what he does. A big part of his production. Seems like a good dude. Real professional and stuff. But Stingley, if you want to check that out, the Pivot with Stingley and his pops, talked about being at organized activities like Nico was last year. So don't expect some sort of like crazy holdout from him. I think he's going to be with the team working out. There's not going to be too much drama. You're always like kind of looking a little bit side eye because of the Mulligetta situation. Those negotiations are going to be interesting. There was like the durability concerns, and then he had a perfectly healthy season. I asked him if that was kind of a luck thing. He said, nah, sometimes he kind of said yes, but he had me re-emphasize what the luck thing was. But Derek Stingley, he is going to be here. And by luck, I mean, like, it's not like he wasn't taking care of his body. I think there's a lot of guys who get injured and you're like, man, this dude ain't taking care of his body. We'll pull up the Stingley. So here's the Stingley conversation. This wasn't Pivot, but about the injury and stuff. It'll be interesting to see what the negotiation is. Well, we might never know, but this was Stingley talking about wanting to be a Texan.
Just make a better plan out there.
You're eligible for the extension now. Is this where you want to be long term?
Yeah, I want to be here forever.
Is that something you want to get done in the offseason?
I mean, I'm gonna let whoever handle that. I'm gonna just be here working out, just take care of me.
How do you elevate individually your game from what we saw this year?
I mean, there's always room to grow. Like that's with anything in life. Like, if you think you're good at something, you can figure out what you can be better at. Like, everything, really. So, was the health? Was there anything you did to put more into that, or is that sometimes just kind of a luck thing, playing the full season? You said luck?
Is there something that you did to get your body more prepared, or is it sometimes just like bad luck when the injuries have happened in the previous seasons?
Nah, when it comes to injuries, that can just happen. Like, it's football, so like you can get hurt. But Nah, I mean, pretty much I've been here every off season, working out with Mike and the whole strength staff every day. Been working with my pops. Like I ain't really. I've done what I've always done. Like it's not like I just did some magic trick and made it here. So yeah.
So yeah, that's Derek Stingley. People are asking why he's shy. He's just a quiet guy. Like, he's a quiet guy everywhere. It's not like he's like hooting and hollering and then kind of tenses up with the camera. He's just a quiet guy. That's just kind of his personality. But my God, what a football player he is. And I don't know how those negotiations go. I don't know how it goes. Like, does 1 year of complete health? And we said this at the start of the season. We've kind of proactively had this discussion, and my God, it happened. You have all the durability concerns heading into the draft. Then you kind of see him in the NFL. Although I would take like a grain of salt, much like the Cooper Kupp 2022 season. I think Stingley probably could have gone on the back end of the rookie year had they needed him. But I mean, they weren't really trying to win, and they kind of shut him down. I mean, they ended up sucking enough to end up getting the number 2 overall pick and getting CJ. So I think you kind of take that with a grain of salt. Then we saw him miss about a handful of games the next year. Like, does one solid year of health, does that override that? Did the negotiations just get completely dismissed? Because I can understand both points of view. The one thing we know, though, about Derek Stingley, it's not a mystery. And this wasn't a mystery heading into last year. Like, he was the defensive player of the month, I think, in December. When he's on the field, he's an elite corner. Like, it's not, we're heading into this season with CJ Stroud, and we're hoping, okay, can CJ Stroud be an elite quarterback? We're hoping that. We're hoping to see that. We've seen glimpses of it. The surroundings obviously aren't right, but we've wondered, can he develop into that? There was no question about that this year. The only question that you had, it didn't exist this year. Does that mean you wipe away the previous? I don't know. I don't know how that works. I like Derek Stingley. Like, some people will say, he looks uncomfortable in front of the camera. The thing I like about Derek Stingley is if you're asking him questions that actually like matter, he's going to answer them. Like, he's going to answer them. Like, when he asks like, what do you mean luck? He wants to get like the full context before he answers. So it might not be a lot of coaches speak. It might not be a lot of talking in circles, a lot of generic stuff. It's very authentic. It's very quick. It's what he wants to say. Now, if you're asking him like generic questions, sometimes he'll ask you to repeat it, and then it's just going to be like a very generic, quick answer because he's not really into that. But Derek Stingley, I mean, and you look at Kamari Lassiter, you might have the best corner duo in the NFL right now, which is insane to think about. You don't have to worry about that. You can fill in that depth. We're talking about wide receiver. That's a little bit concerning. You still got to fill in a little bit at corner. But man, what an absolute beast he is. Michael D says, no way an agent goes in assuming he's going to be injured. I don't know what that means. I don't think, obviously, the agent's going to sell what we just saw this year. The team's going to go in and they're going to say, okay, there's still durability issues. A lot of times when there's durability issues, sometimes the price doesn't get as high. Guy who plays 19 ball games like Sting did this year, whatever, 18, 19, there's no questions asked. Guy who misses half the season, there's kind of some questions. I think that kind of happened with Nico this year. I think that's probably why Nico wanted to get the deal done. Some guys want to bet on themselves. Probably why Nico wanted to get the deal done, on top of the obvious. But yeah, it's definitely different. Yeah, I don't expect David Mulugeta to go in there and say, hey, he might get injured. No, I would say that would probably be a bad approach, and it wouldn't be a very Mulugeta approach. Do the Texans bring it up though? I think you probably do. Rick, you just can't quit him, man. Rick is so in love with Jamal Hill. Work up Jamal Hill at nickel. Goodness gracious. Can't quit him, Rick. Definitely got to get Petrie at nickel. And then probably put Jimmy at safety until he gets hurt. Or depending how they want to handle that. But yeah, the nickel position will help for sure. You just cannot quit Jamal Hill. Look at this guy. Rick is all about Jamal Hill. Loves him some Jamal Hill. But yeah, check out that Derek Stingley interview with his dad on the pivot. If you kind of want to see the man behind the ball player, the personality, the legend, what are they calling him? All-Pro Sting. Check out that pivot thing. It's interesting, for sure. It's interesting. Andrew says, Sting talking about how Nico working out constantly in spite of potential deal and that being the standard he wants to follow has me so hyped for next year. Yeah, it's a standard. They got a nice little culture here. There's no doubt about that. They got a nice little culture. So we'll see how it goes. It'll be fun. Going to be interesting. Offseason's intensifying. Things are starting to shape up. We're starting to talk about receivers. We got the big game this week. Does it feel like the Super Bowl's this Sunday? I mean, whenever I wake up and it's happening, the TV's on, full blast. I'm trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do snack-wise. But right now, it just kind of feels like, yeah, I'm looking towards the offseason. I'm not even like, I'm going to be all in on the Eagles this Sunday. I've already made that kind of clear. But it just kind of feels like, yeah, Super Bowl, okay. See what happens. Figure it out. Figure it out. See how it goes. Yeah, I like Jamal Hill. He was likable in the draft video. No, for sure. Versatile, too. Yeah, I was a big fan. No doubt. No doubt. For sure. Was a fan. Cooper Kupp, I'll say this right now. I'm going to get out of here on this.
High-grade marijuana called Kush on the streets.
So, Cooper Kupp right now, there's a word that I keep hearing that is incredibly appropriate for what I'm about to do. And that word is leftovers.
High-grade marijuana called Kush on the streets.
I am going to go downstairs and I have some leftovers in the fridge. And I believe that these leftovers are the best leftovers that you can eat. What would you say are the best leftovers you can eat? What are the best leftovers that you can eat? Because I think there's an easy answer to this. I think you can almost make a case that it tastes better when it's leftover than when you actually eat it the first time. I cooked this today. Wife, daughter loved it, I think. I don't know. They didn't really tell me. Some people say pizza. No. Some people say Thanksgiving. You kind of get tired of it. Some people say cold fried chicken. That's a true pothead. Some people say gumbo. Don't know about all that. Some people say tacos. Don't know about that. Meatloaf. How many people in the world actually make meatloaf? Italian food. Spaghetti. Lasagna. Why is it that spaghetti and lasagna are the best leftovers possible? Chicken Alfredo, someone says. That goes with the Italian theme. I am obsessed with leftover spaghetti. It's one of my favorite things. If you're hungry enough, sometimes you eat it cold.
High-grade marijuana called Kush on the streets.
Someone says burgers. Don't agree with that. I think the burger's got to be hot. Don't agree with that. Austin, I think you have the right answer. Spaghetti. Lasagna, amazing leftover. But the spaghetti, leftovers, all this talk about Cooper Kupp, wasp, leftovers, all that. It has me hungry. It's only appropriate. Go eat me some leftovers, some leftover spaghetti right here at about midnight. That is very, very, very smart. I'm not even going to judge myself for this. I think this is perfect. Someone says tamales. Don't know about that. Not bad, but don't know about that. Barbecue can hit, especially when you pile it up. Everyone's saying meatloaf. How many people are making? When's the last time y'all ate meatloaf? Ain't doing that. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Subscribe, like, right along. Let me know what you think. about the Texans adding wide receivers. Let me know what you think about Nick Caley and the staff. If you have leftover hot takes, get those in there as well. And we can argue about Egbuka. We got damn near 2.5 months to do so. No matter what happens, no matter what you choose to do, always remember when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Video dropping about 11 a.m. or noon tomorrow on Egbuka. SNL as usual at 4. And I'll talk to you again right here in the night live stream at 10:30. Appreciate y'all for coming through.
We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localized every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up, we number 1. You don't need to try your luck. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room.